Hello, I'm Dr. Nicole Birri with the Illinois Center for Transition and Work. This webinar includes 3 series related to teaching workplace social skills to individuals with severe disabilities. In this particular series, we are going to focus on how to identify workplace social skills to target for instruction. Before we begin, let's talk about what workplace social skills are. These skills can be placed into 3 categories: work-related skills, which are specific to a job. Some of these skills include following directions, asking for help, asking for clarification, sharing information about work, and responding to and accepting criticism. The second are non-work related skills, and these skills are not specific to a job. Some of these skills include sharing information that are of topics of interest, conversational skills, asking personal questions, and joking and teasing. The third are work-related and non-work-related skills, which are needed in both the job setting and outside of the job setting. And these skills include active listening, verbal and nonverbal communication, initiating interactions, responding appropriately, exhibiting appropriate social behaviors, and social amenities. So now that we understand what workplace social skills are, let's talk about why these are important. And these skills are important because individuals with disabilities are employed at much lower rates than individuals without disabilities. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2021 found that only 17.9% of individuals with disabilities compared to 61.8% of individuals without disabilities were employed. Another reason this matters is because most of the poor employment outcomes individuals with disabilities face are due to their limited social skills. We've also found that a lack of social skills is one of the main reasons that employers do not hire employees with disabilities. And finally, employers have actually reported valuing social skills over technical skills needed to perform the job. And the skills that we have found that employers value include personal integrity, the ability to follow directions, respect for others, communication and courtesy, asking for clarification, refraining from inappropriate touching, higher order thinking skills, having self-control, as well as positive self-concept. These are all the skills that the literature has found that employers value. So then, how do we identify what specific social skills need targeting for instruction? Well, this can be done by assessing. And there's 3 specific assessments that we're going to talk about that will help you in identifying which skills to target. The first is an ecological assessment. The second is followed by a discrepancy analysis. And the third are observations. Let's look at these individually. An ecological assessment assesses activities that take place within the setting and the skills needed to engage in those activities. And what this does is it identifies what the expectations are, what critical skills are needed, and the skills that should be assessed prior to the student starting their job. And what this does is it promotes instruction within the natural setting. And it also improves generalization by teaching those skills within the natural setting, since generalization is the ultimate goal for all of our students. So how do you conduct an ecological assessment? The first thing you do is you want to observe the employees without disabilities. And while you're doing so, note the social skills that are needed in the environment, the frequency those skills are used, and then the context in which the skills are needed. Here's an example of an ecological assessment. So you'll notice that there are 4 columns. The first is the social skills that were needed in the environment. The second was how many times those skills were observed. The third is the context in which the skills were needed. And then last, you want to make a column for additional comments because there may be particular situations that may help you determine what those skills actually were within that context and any other additional things you may have noticed. Let's look at a case study on an ecological assessment that was conducted. Jade is a student with a visual impairment. She recently got a job at a Best Buy where she will be working in the appliance department. Before starting her new job, Jade's teacher conducted an ecological assessment to help prepare her. To conduct the assessment, Jade's teacher discreetly stood in the appliance section of Best Buy and observed employees without disabilities for approximately 30 minutes. So what Jade's teacher observed during this time is that the employees were approaching customers when they stopped to look at a product to see if they needed help. She also observed when approached by a customer, employees would answer their questions. And when an employee didn't know the answer, they asked another coworker for help. She also noticed that employees engaged in conversations not only with customers while they were looking at products, but also they had conversations amongst themselves when customers were not present. So the results of Jade's ecological assessment, it identified the following skills that Jade would need to work in the appliance department of Best Buy. These skills include offering assistance, responding to questions, asking for help, and conversational skills. So these 4 skills are what Jade will need to be assessed on further to make sure she has before starting her job. Next, using the information found in the ecological assessment, you want to conduct a discrepancy analysis. And what this does is it organizes the steps of a task to identify the discrepancy between how an individual with a disability performs the task compared to coworkers without a disability. And this helps to identify the steps that are needed to perform the task, as well as the accuracy of step completion. So how do you conduct a discrepancy analysis? Well, the first thing you want to do is create a task analysis for each skill that was observed. And you want to note the steps that were needed to perform the skill by a non-disabled coworker, as well as the accuracy of steps performed by the student with a disability. And here's an example of what a discrepancy analysis might look like. Notice that in the first column, the steps that were needed for each one of the 4 skills that were identified are in that column. The next column is simply whether or not the student with a disability was able to perform that task. And next, you always want to have a column for additional comments, so you can take notes of things that may have occurred while watching the student perform the task. For example, in the first step, approaches a customer or employee. In this particular case, the student was able to do it, but something to note was that they approached the employee, but they did so at an inappropriate time. So yes, they were able to approach the customer, but they just didn't do it in the appropriate time. Therefore, this is still something that needs to be looked at further. So the results from the discrepancy analysis we saw previously demonstrated that skills that should be targeted include greetings, asking follow-up questions, staying on topic, and termination of a conversation. The next set of assessments that you might conduct are observations. And through an observation, you can use a task analysis, you can use surveys or evaluations, or these observations can be exploratory, meaning just things that are observed within the environment and the things that the employee with a disability is noted doing. And what this does is it provides information about what things were observed, maybe what the student's strengths and weaknesses were, progress that's been made. And it might also tell you what new skills may need targeting for instruction. How do you conduct an observation? Well, the first thing is to observe the student in the natural setting, engaging in the social skills that are needed. You can also do things like interviewing those that work with the student so they can share things they've observed. You can create or use an employer evaluation or survey, Or you can create a set of open-ended questions regarding the student's social skills in the setting. And remember, you want to observe the student periodically because you want to see if the student is making progress. Here's an example of an employee evaluation. If you notice, there are several columns here. And this is an actual evaluation that an employer uses. And not all of these are related to social skills, but this will also give you a lot of information that you may be able to use to see what skills need further targeting. In the first column, you'll notice communication skills. And those things are like the ability to express clearly, the ability in written communication, and listens carefully and acknowledges and understands messages. If you'll notice here, a 5 is outstanding, a 4 is very satisfactory, 3 is satisfactory, 2 needs improvement, and 1 is unsatisfactory. In the first column, you'll notice that the student received a 2, which means it needs improvement. And then the ability in written communication is unsatisfactory. So if you'll notice, these are things that tell you that these specific skills need further targeting. Let's look at an example. So Danny has an intellectual disability and an expressive language disorder. He has been employed at Outback Steakhouse for 6 months. Danny's job responsibilities include bussing tables and delivering food to customers when a server is too busy to deliver the food. Now that Danny has been on the job for 6 months, he is due for an employee evaluation, which will be conducted by his supervisor. The evaluation includes the following categories: communication skills, personal and social attributes, work quality and habits, attitude, accountability and ability, and work skills. The evaluation doesn't focus solely on workplace social skills as mentioned previously. However, there are many social skills that can be found within each of those categories. So looking at the evaluation that was shown previously, what we know is that some of Danny's weaknesses in social skills are clear expression, clear written communication, listening, acknowledging and understanding messages, acting responsible according to the situation, grasping instructions, willingness to follow directions and rules, asking for assistance when needed, and accepting criticism. So information from the evaluation has told us now what some of the weaknesses Danny has, and this will also help you in identifying those skills that should be targeted. Some of the key takeaways to take away from this presentation today are when identifying skills to target, you have to use assessments. And those assessments are ecological assessments followed by a discrepancy analysis and through observations. And it's important to note that prior to starting work experience, you want to conduct your ecological assessment and then follow that with a discrepancy analysis for determining those skills needing targeted for instruction. And finally, once the student is employed, you want to conduct observations periodically to determine if progress is being made and if there are any new skills that have been identified as being problematic. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and please see our Series 1 and Series 3 that focus on workplace social skills for individuals with severe disabilities.